Thank you for coming to the Finance Committee meeting, where we're going to take a deeper look into curriculum and instruction. And just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded for future viewing by anyone because it's one of the budget meetings where we discuss the budget for 2022 to 2023. And it's being a live cast. Thank you. And I will pass it over to Alexis.
Yep. Thank you. So go ahead and do the next slide. Thank you. I'll keep you awake today. We'll be all good. Don't worry about it. So we wanted to start off our presentation by talking about the education and learning department in general terms, because when you look at the budget today, it won't only incorporate areas that you think are straight curriculum and instruction. There's some other areas in there. And in addition to what you see in the budget, our scope is so much broader than that in our department. And so there's oversight for our elementary and our secondary principals. Our elementary supervisors, we have leads, we have technology integrators that are all part of our area. In addition to that, we have literacy and math specialists, we have instructional support team members, and the MTSS process that we've been talking about. Our oversight is broad in that it also includes community learning and leadership, so things like the Achievement Imperative Task Force is under our umbrella, as is CARE, and often ad hoc will be a part of what's happening as well. And then we're inclusive of all of our regular education, secondary and elementary educators, as well as academic council, which is all of the administrative team in the district, which is about 50-ish people when you think of the whole group of them. And so it's pretty broad when you think of that umbrella that our department really does have a touch on in the district. Next slide, please.
I just wanted to ask real quick before we start the whole presentation that this doesn't cover staffing, right? This covers everything but staffing, which was covered last month.
Right. So while we'll show you the regular education staffing in here, the budget does not include our staffing numbers, which you'll see. That would make it a really large budget, as you can imagine. So the numbers are in there, but it doesn't include the cost for staffing. Yep. So our lower Marion experience, when we talk about that umbrella, it's just really what you just said, right? So think about how we touch all of the different departments. And so when we're thinking about favorable class sizes, our staff to our student ratio, all the different course offerings that we talked about this year, that's in conjunction with our HR department and Megan Schaefer. We could not function without technology in our department at this point. You heard, I mean, when we're at CCOB, you hear about the software packages that we're proposing, or the new technology textbooks, right? And so really George Frazier is an integral part of what's happening. Jim Lill comes into play when we're talking about all of our field trips and our co-curricular experiences. And Kimberly is always integrated with our group, our student services department, guidance counselors and wellness, and all of those types of things really are a big piece of what happens within our realm. So we could not function without every other department. Maybe that's why we end up going last, because we really are connected. I think we're always interconnected, but we're really interconnected to everything else. And so our team specifically is made up of myself and Dr. Gaudioso, who is the Director of Elementary Education. I don't think our team members knew their pictures were going to be on the screen, so ta-da! So we also have Jason Lilly, who's the Supervisor of 712 STEM, Leslie Pratt, 712 Humanities, Nancy Aconcha-Mesa is K6 STEM, and then Dory Martin-Patone is K6 Humanities. That is not all inclusive of the jobs that we do. So for instance, I'll give you examples. Jason Lilly also oversees LMVA. He does our dual enrollment programming. Leslie Pratt is K-12 library. Dory Martin does all of the federal programs. So we would have a long, broad list if we were to say all the different areas that everybody really oversees. So we just put up the big titles, but there's a lot of oversight of all the different areas from all of the people that you see on the screen. So we talked about staffing numbers. Our budget does not include, when we show you our budget, the costs, but there are 620.3 regular education staff in the district that we support. And if you remember, and we're going to talk about it today, we really did do a lot of work this year on reimagining our programming. And so there's shifts from last year to this year when we look at some of our staffing numbers. A good example of that would be world language, where you see that shift to 20 middle school world language teachers because our FLES teachers moved up. And so there are some shifts in there just because of the way that we've reconfigured in the district. But overall, we have about 620 full-time staff members. Next. All of our work that we do in our area is focused in our strategic plan All Forward. And you've seen this slide many, many times before, but remember that our focus areas are transformative curriculum, professional learning, student-driven schools, spirit of community, and redefining success. We use all of these areas, God bless you, as we think about how we're going to budget, as we think about how we're going to move through the year. Next slide, please. Particularly, though, we focus on 3 areas within our area: transformative curriculum, student-driven schools, and redefining success. And they really put a lens on how we're thinking about how we're going to budget, how we're going to staff, how we're going to provide professional development. So you've seen the next 2 slides a lot this year, I would think. Remember, we've been talking about how we're reimagining our K-4 and our 5A programming. We're not going to go through these slides because we've done them a lot, but we put them in there just to remember why our budget looks the way that it does and why we've transitioned some of our costs. And it is based on our highlights that we have for both K-4 and then our next slide, 5A. And if you're thinking about it, we talked about new teams, we talked about new structures, we talked about new curriculum, and they're all a part of what we have in our budgetary process. So I've been saying team, and team is really important because what started to drive the work that we did this year was that reconfiguration that we had in the district. So we knew we have a new middle school opening up come September. With that brought adjusted pathways and a new K-4 and a 5-8 structure and new transitions for all of those students. And so we were tasked with reimagining what our program could look like in the upcoming school year. And we've talked a lot about that this year. But what we've come up with are new learning designs, new schedules, you've seen the new schedules, new teaming structures, multi-year goals that go along with it. In addition to that, we have MTSS and several infrastructure tools to support all of that. And the reason team is so important is that everybody in this room could not have done it alone. Every piece of this is being accomplished through the use of a variety of teams that include multiple stakeholders, including parents, including teachers, including administrators, to really design and reimagine what our program is going to look like. So it takes a team to make this happen. Jen and I were like, can we make it a TEAM? We couldn't do it, but we were trying. Next slide. So specifically with our budget, we're going to talk about the LM experience. We're going to go over our budget summaries. We're going to look at text and digital resources and professional learning in particular, because they are the biggest drivers of our budget. And then in addition to that, we have some other buckets that really are about All Forward, our strategic plan. Our whole overall budget is $3,119,254. And you can see how it's broken out by elementary, middle, high. We have a strategic plan budget fund, student achievement imperative, and then there's also a bucket for summer school. And so that's really the makeup of our budget. Our largest percent is our high school budget. And you can imagine that is because things just cost more as our students get older. And so when we're talking about like probes for possibly a classroom, or you're talking about AP Chem textbook, they cost a lot of money. And so that's typically why our high school is always our largest budget driver on this. $3 million doesn't sound like a lot, really, when you think about the whole budget in general, but also keep in mind that our buildings budget for a lot of our curricular experiences as well. So part of their textbook and supplies also support our programming. We take the bigger pieces, the bigger overall district pieces, and that's what we budget for. So we're pretty proud of the experience that happens in the Lower Merion School District. These are just some highlights. We could go on forever and ever, but we wanted to highlight some of the things that we really are proud of. We had 23 National Merit finalists at Lower Merion and 14 at Harriton. We've been named the best community in education for the 12th consecutive year. We're always ranked high on a lot of the different things that come out, but NISH ranked us the top district in Montgomery County, 4th best in Pennsylvania, and 24th in the country. We really promote arts and STEM in this district. So if you think about our arts education, we had 2 gold medal winners and 3 silver medal winners for Scholastic Art and Writing Competition at Lower Merion. And at Harriton, we had 2 gold medals and 1 silver medal. And in addition to that, we had a middle school author who won a silver medal as well. Our 5th graders at Marion won the Citizenships Challenge. And then we all know how great Amazing Ace and Dr. Harriton are, and they raise funds for a variety of charities, including this year, Sean Hughes' Memorial Trust Fund. And so that's just part of it. And then a picture, the next slide, says 1,000 words, so we thought we'd show you some pictures as well to highlight our experience. Pretty cool that Lower Merion has built 10 schools in Guatemala, and they opened their door this year. Took a little time because of COVID, but it was open this year. Harriton High School, BC placed 1st in Science Olympiad. I added a new one on the side, which is, I love that picture that has all of our 4 secondary schools in it. We had 135 top 10 placements, 16 first and 56 third place finishes at TSA just this last weekend, and all 4 schools made it to nationals. And so we have a lot of really great things happening in the district that we love to highlight, and we just wanted to show you a few. From a curricular standpoint, and this is all part of our budget, or may some of it sit in some of the building budgets, but extended kindergarten is part of our budget. We have an after-school elementary program that tutors students. As you know, we added K+ this year. We're moving world language to 5th through 8th grade, and this is a real highlight for us because I don't know of any other school in our area that's offering world language every single day in grades 5th through 8, and so that's really a pretty neat thing that we have happening. We have IB at Harriton, and that's open to both Lower Merion and Harriton students. What's really neat about IB is that the program is growing, and so this year we have about 40 seniors, and next year we have about 77. And the same is true for our junior class, so it's increasing enrollment, which is pretty neat. We transitioned our dual enrollment program to Gwen and Mercy this year, so our teachers will be teaching that program for the first time, which is also pretty cool. And so that this year, next year, will be about 1.3 FTEs from a staffing perspective, and then we pay for any textbooks or any tuition for students who can't afford to do it, so that's also part of our budget. With advanced placement, we pay half of the cost for every single test that our students take, and that's actually in the building budgets, that amount. So our shifts from a professional learning perspective, and there's been a lot of questions about, and you can keep clicking through it, it just has like a couple, yeah. There's been a lot of questions about this, and so we wanted to just really talk about professional learning major shifts for us because there is a bunch of them this year, and so we wanted to talk about what professional learning looks like and then some of the costs. And I say some because when we think of professional learning, some of it's in our budget, some of it is in building budgets, some of it is in student services budget, so it really crosses so many different areas, professional learning. But from a budgetary standpoint, if you were to look at our budget, you would see it in areas like we're paying teachers to do extra training time. We're bringing in people to provide staff development for our staff. We're sending people out to conferences. That's really where you see all of our PD money going. And so we're thinking about our shifts as far as interdisciplinary learning, the flexibility of the schedules that we've shown to you. We're going to talk about all the new courses in just a second, but the redesign of those new courses as well, continuous improvement, and then of course MTSS. They're really our biggest buckets for professional learning. Please know, and I think we were asked, like, can you say, like, how much does it really cost, like, by person? We don't log our hours, but if you think of this week, and I don't know, Leslie is in the audience with us. Leslie worked, she's worked on the new communications curriculum, which you can go to the next slide. The communications thread that you see up here, they've met 3 days already to start to work on that build, and they continue to work on it, and they will have additional days this summer to build those courses so that we're ready to go for September. So we don't log the 3 days that that Leslie has worked on it, right? Because there's time outside of that in addition to it. And we're not logging the teacher hours per se, but it's all part of if you were doing a cost analysis as you would think about how professional development is done in the school district. Specifically to the new course offerings that you see on the screen right here, we have budgeted $182,156. That's for all of these courses. So it's the World Language Reimagination. Remember, you approved Comprehensible Classroom. I think last month you approved that. That'll happen next week and continue through the end of the year. The PBL learning experiences, STEM, our interdisciplinary learning, and then our new threads of leadership and communication. All of that will fall under that professional development cost that you see there to reimagine and build new courses and content for our schools next year. In addition to what we do during the school year, we also have a variety of summer programs. We served last year almost 1,500 students in the summer, spending approximately $550,000. This money is budgeted actually in our ESSER funds for this school year, with the exception of our high school summer school, because that is primarily an acceleration program for most of our students, and SPIES is going to be covered 50% this year. Other than that, everything else in the budget slide up here is covered through ESSER. ELD Summer Academy is covered through Title III funds as well. And so you could see that we really do have a variety of offerings for our students in the summer. Just to highlight some new things, this year we're going to have a Girls in STEM camp, and that's both at the elementary and the middle level, so that is new for us. ITOS is only in its second year. Last year we served middle school students, about 50 of them, with individual tutoring. Instead of doing a summer school program, we were looking at reimagining what that could look like and not having them go through summer school. So this will be the second year of ITOS. So we're really proud of the robust summer offerings that we have in place.
So I'm going to share another one of the really enriching experiences students participate in regular times, and that would be field trips. We wanted to give you a little bit of a history here and also a vision for where we'd like to go as we return to our full functioning. So prior to COVID, there was a shift to building residency partnerships with community centers and educational resources that students could, one, experience as a trip, but also that we could build a partnership so that they were beginning to work with us, help us revise our curriculum. So prior to that, we had probably had about 600, 700 field trips per year. When I arrived in 1920, it was the first year of the residencies, and the initial work had been done to start looking at the curriculum, to have teachers start to partner with some centers. They had some off-site experiences, and unfortunately that was put on hold with COVID. Now, as of this school year, we had hoped to start resuming some of that, and what we're finding is with existing resources, both of transportation and nursing, we're still in our pandemic response. So we haven't reopened the residency experiences. We hope to do that for next year and start building those partnerships again. This year, however, we were able to resume trips for students, and these included academic competitions, community service, the culminating experiences for transitional grade levels like grade 4, grade 5, and overnight field trips. So those we did resume, and that does not include athletics, so that would be in a separate category. So we've been establishing some return to normal, and we hope that next year we would be able to resume residencies. Now the residencies, just to give you some context, this partnership was envisioned as attaching to specific grade levels. In second grade, one of the new ones we were proposing was Franklin Institute. We hope to further explore that. We had a third grade Barnes Foundation residency. We had a 4th and 7th grade partnership with the LM Conservancy. Our 5th grade participated in a connection with the Museum of the American Revolution. And then our middle school students in 8th grade had just started with the Constitution Center and African American History Museum. And we had just started that work just prior to closure. So we look forward to being able to resume that. And then there are a few partnerships that are blooming that we'll continue to explore more. And those include partnerships with the Penn Museum and the Bryn Mawr Film Institute. And the vision here is that these really become part of our curriculum planning. In addition to academic and during the day experiences, we have co-curricular and extracurricular experiences that make up the Lower Merion student experience. Here you can see some elementary experiences, Reading Olympics, after-school STEM clubs, first Lego League, which is this Saturday, Family STEM Night, which is next week. So we have a lot of exciting things happening, and these are included in the budget. What you'll see with middle school is, the expansion of after-school clubs and activities. Next slide. And probably about 30 clubs, after-school clubs in each middle school. And you can see here that as the student independence and choice and interests develop, the opportunities develop as well. There are costs attached here. These are not included or part of the curricular budget. These are housed elsewhere, but it gives you an idea of some of the offerings available to students. When we think of the athletic teams, costs associated can include officials, uniform replacement on a cycle, and those are things that are supported so that our students have this, this expansive experience. And the high school, there are about 74 clubs at Harriton and 88 at Lower Merion High School. Similar structures here, and as student experience and independence and choice and interest increase, the opportunities increase as well. And you see the costs associated, the natatorium or the pool is included there. That includes the staffing, maintenance, and management. And again, these are not included in the education and instruction budget, just to give you a picture of the student experience. So this is a picture of the overall elementary level budget. So this includes grades K to 4 for next year. So our entire budget is $690,428. The breakdown is by subject area, as you can see. The largest areas, just for some context here, when you look at, for example, science and math and language arts, you have those costs associated with our technology licenses. So when you think of math, for example, our Exact Path, our Dreambox, those software programs that support the curricular experience and student learning. And when you look at social studies, and I just want to emphasize this, a lot of our informational reading and nonfiction reading may be in the digital resources that you're seeing in ELA or in library. So the reason that some of those are larger than others in most cases is either the professional development or the, the salaries or the digital resources. And when I say salaries, it's not the salaries for the full-time employee salaries. It would be curriculum development work, workshop attendance when people are coming after school for essentialized curriculum work. That's where some of the salaries may come in, first Lego League, after school math and science clubs, things like that. So that is our elementary budget. You can see world language. We have a cost still committed because we are working on that 4th grade exploratory. And we had some really exciting conversation yesterday. I'm going to advance to the breakdown here. You can see the largest, yep, please. You can see the largest proportion is from these textbooks and digital resources. And this spans a couple categories in our budget. There's books, which often now have a digital component, and then there are the software and digital resource costs. And some of those will be familiar to you. Reading, the degrees of reading power, the DRP is an assessment we share with the board every year. We have STEM enhancements, the Dreambox Learning Exact Path Support Math, and then you've heard a lot about our Illuminate or MTSS work, and Illuminate is our new data warehousing tool. So So those are just some highlights of some of those digital resource costs, and you can see that $369,511, the proportion that makes of the total $690. So that would be the strands that are attached to software and digital resources. And next slide. So as Dr. McGloin shared, some targeted professional development costs have been set aside for the new courses, the new designs. Within budget areas are funds, in those content areas within elementary, are funds that support professional learning in an ongoing continuous improvement way. And some of that work has included the problem-based learning. Yesterday, we sat in on a group that had been working after school and just did some wonderful work related to moving this work forward. It was really exciting, but that would have been supported through the professional development funds that are within each of the budget areas, the subject area budgets. What's exciting is to step back and just think about how in best practice professional development is job embedded. It's part of what we do. It's part of every interaction our supervisors and our lead teachers have with each other, that our principals have with our teams. So it really is throughout our system and hard to quantify, but this just gives you a glimpse of some of the funds that are set aside in targeted ways.
So you're going to see the same exact path for our 3 levels. Our middle school budget outline is on the screen. And it's interesting, I think the family and consumer science ended up being 1, but I don't know why it's 0. We obviously are spending some money in FCS, not a ton, but some. This does not include all the transitions that we have that are budgeted for Black Rock Middle School. And so when you look at this budget, it really isn't inclusive of all those costs, but I can tell you that we have been trying to be as fiscally responsible as well in that transitional process. And so what we've done, and if you've looked at the board agenda, you've seen a lot of different items that we're saying we need to either recycle or get rid of at this point. We have inventoried all of our textbooks and all of our materials. We're still in process a little bit at K-4. 5, 6, 7, 8 have finished all their inventory. And then what we're doing is we're taking those books and we're going to reallocate them to all the middle schools. So all the 5th grade books will be moved to the 3 middle schools, and books from Welsh Valley and books from BC will also go to Black Rock. And so we've been really trying to be as thoughtful as we could, looking at what we currently have and then reallocating, and then only buying what was necessary for us to open that new school. And so the cost is not crazy expensive because we have really tried to be as fiscally responsible with that as possible. It's been a big undertaking, as you can imagine, and we'd have had several meetings on how do we make this happen, including how many boxes does each teacher get to do the move. We're that granular, but I think it's paid off because when you look at our budget, it really, I think, is tight, and that was what was important to us. So from a budgetary standpoint at elementary, middle, and high, when we look at those buckets, it's by each content area primarily. And then in addition to that, in the elementary and the high, there's a director's budget, and then we also have technology incorporated in that as well, because certain things come directly from our budget and not from the content area, such as like Illuminate would be an example of something like that. So for our digital software and resources and texts, you could see that we're almost about $450,000. And we include things like No Red Ink, DRP, Words Their Way, Blackboard. We're actually going to be transitioning from Blackboard to Schoology in the upcoming school year as our LMS. So that is a focus area for us. And that'll happen throughout the whole entire year, and then our intention will be to be with Schoology the following year. But we are transitioning our LMS based on a really loud cry from our teachers. They really felt like we needed to move. So we are doing that in the upcoming school year. Oh, LMS, I'm sorry, Learning Management System. And so that just helps us put all of our assignments up for our students and manage what they're doing in the classroom. So our areas of focus at all 3 levels are Illuminate and MTSS. That is a thread that you're going to see through all 3 levels. In addition to that, 7th and 8th grade ELA will continue to manage and look at that and buy new materials. And then you heard me talk about comprehensible classroom. But we are transitioning the way that we're instructing our students at the middle level in world language, because developmentally, we need to make sure that they're learning in the right method. And so that's a really big undertaking for us. Professional learning, NGSS standards have just been adopted by the state this year. They're the new generation science standards. That's what NGSS stands for. And so you will see that as a thread through the three different levels as well, because that now is going to have an impact on our instructional practice. So that is an area of focus for us. Text-dependent analysis, if you've ever heard the term TDA, that's what that is. It continues to be an area of focus. Our new unified arts electives for us are big, and so they will be part of what we're doing. In addition to that, literacy support classes, problem-based learning. We continue to work with our SHEG model, which is Stanford History and Education Group, and that layers anti-racism lens throughout all of our social studies programming. And so that's a continuation for us as well. And of course, our interdisciplinary block. That's okay. High school is our largest budget, as I had said, and you know, it makes sense if you think about it, because materials just cost more as we go up through the grades, and so that is $764,401. And again, it's just by content area. The curriculum, the director's budget is in this one as well. So our focus for software, textbooks, and digital resources at our high school level continue to be Illuminate and MTSS. We are looking at summer reading. Our 9th grade ELA is under review for the upcoming school year. Remember, we talked about new chemistry books. We've talked about some of these with you already, right? EP books, and so that's why you see areas of focus for that, because we have digital subscriptions for a lot of this, and so it continues to be an area of focus for us. Hopefully these names up here aren't new to you, because they're things that we've talked about in curriculum. They're going through the finance committee, many of them, and are for approval. And so you do see each one of these things as we progress through the school year when we're updating our subscriptions. Professional learning at the high school, it mirrors a lot of the other levels. As I had said, it's really not very, very different from what we're seeing at some of our other levels, because we continue to. All right, let's see if I work now. So we continue to work through a lot of the same things at our middle and our high school level. So you see things like NGSS standards, that transition, text dependence analysis, that SHEG model, which is really important for the work that we're doing, problem-based learning as well. So in addition to the areas that we just talked about, we also have budgetary oversight for a few different things, including the strategic plan, student achievement, and achievement imperative. And I'm going to go into each one individually next. So I just wanted to highlight those areas before we moved into the next slide. Could you move into the next one? First one is strategic plan goals. There are focused exploration and focus areas. We have $286,725 there. And we kind of went through this and talked about where are we in our continuum with each of these areas, because they are always a work in progress, as you know. And so when you think about the strategic plan and all the work that we've done, there are some things that are established that we feel like are embedded in what we do. There's things that we're working on and we're redefining, things that are still developing, and so our areas of focus really are thoughtfully with all of those things in mind. This year in particular, with strategic plan, we'll be focusing on MTSS, our K4, 5-8 transition. We need to really look at our report card in grade 5 to 8. We're making do going into this year, but we really have to put a committee together and think about what the report card needs to look like based on that transition. And then in addition to that, we have data analysis, practice, and interdisciplinary learning. All of these areas are budgeted within this specific code. So it includes things like professional development, site visits for us to go see other schools that may be doing something we might want to think about taking pieces of. It includes professional development and learning that we might go out to, or even contracts with different vendors to come in. So that's what's in the strategic plan budget. Achievement imperative. That budget specifically focuses on our AITF, Student supports for all of our buildings, so it's our STEM programming in that budget, NSB, which is I think it's the National Society for Black Engineers, which also made it to nationals, by the way. We've had some really good things happen this year. But all of our Becton Scholars, Empower and Reach, which are our affinity groups, are supported through this budget. In addition to that, we contract with Sage Wellness. This year we have Victorious Hall at all of our care meetings. In addition, he helps every single building with their CP teams and their cultural proficiency plans. So that contract is part of this. And then we also pay for some things for care and ad hoc and ELD family night. That's all part of that achievement imperative budget. So it supports a variety of things around our equity work. And then student achievement. Our student achievement budget pays for the Yes Academy, which supports 50 middle school students that were targeted to participate in this academy around STEM and literacy. It's really high engagement, and we never have less than 50. Every year we have what we have budgeted for. In addition to that, it supports our summer bridge programming, which is mathematics advancement. So that's in the student achievement budget. So, just to summarize, and I think we went over a lot, but our budget is pretty broad. Even though it's not enormous, it really supports a lot of different areas in the school district. And our focus is always around equity and access. That really acts as our umbrella and lens of what we're doing. So when we think about multi-tiered systems support, or that K-8 reimagination, cultural proficiency, effective instruction, technology integration, and data literacy, it really has a lens for the district on our strategic plan and equity and access. Questions?
I have a question. Thank you for the in-depth presentation, but I am curious to know what is the budget that's not included in here for professional development? What do we spend for that? As well as what is the expense for staff, the staffing bill?
So Vic needs to answer the staffing because regular education staffing, I don't know how much it costs for that.
You're talking for the entire, I'm sorry, your question on staffing is?
My first question is, what are we paying for professional development? What is the cost for that? And then what are we paying overall for labor costs or staffing costs?
Specifically, though, to the regular education.
I would like to have both.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think last we were at staffing, I think Ms. Schaefer went over the cost for, our total cost for staffing.
Right, but since we're talking about this right now, I wanted to see what the whole number was and add those together with this presentation. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers here. We can get them for you.
We can also pull all of our, so professional development in the district, when you think about a code, it's 2260 and 2270. And remember I said it spans multiple areas. So we have professional development budget, but special education has a professional development budget. Our schools have professional development budget. So what we could do is we could pull those two codes and then give you the total amount. I think that's what you're asking for, right? Not just us, but you're talking in a general sense. What is it?
Right, because what the bottom line cost is for everything is what I'm asking.
Yep, so we could do that. So you want to know, we can definitely get those for you. That'll be something Vic needs to pull, but we could pull it across all the district to see what that code costs.
Thank you.
You got it.
And then your labor costs, are you looking for instructional cost?
Yes, at the moment I was just talking about instructional costs.
Regular ed instructional cost?
Ed instruction, not, housekeeping and all that, just the education costs. The teachers.
So teachers,
Right.
professional staff only, okay.
Yes, thanks.
And just to be clear, I think we'd all like to see that, because I'd like to see professional development overall.
That'll be in Friday's update.
Yeah, just wanted to, yes, please.
Right, for our budgetary purposes, right, for our budgetary purposes, that's okay, for our budgetary purposes and curriculum instruction, when we pull all of our professional development costs, in total, it's $665,000, $1,015. That's just curriculum instruction. And there is others, like I said, right? Think about student services and all we provide for any kind of SEL, right? That takes professional development, but that would be in a Kimberly's budget code, not in our budget code. So that's us in particular, but we can pull and get you the whole entire district on top of that, okay? Yep, we can take care of that.
Well, in staff development, are you talking just instructional staff development? There also is non-instructional staff development too that we have for those employees. Are you talking just instructional?
At the moment, but now that you bring it up. I didn't even realize we had additional.
Well, you do for, drivers have to have training and.
Okay, well then let's add that into the pot too.
There's a lot of different training, just make sure what your request is.
All right.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty significant when you think about it from a perspective of everybody that we have to train in the school district, right? Because it isn't, we think professional development and often we just think about our teachers, right? And sometimes we think about instructional assistants. So there's somebody that we might lump into our professional development bucket if you think about it. But we do train our bus drivers, we train our food service employees. And so that is part of what has to happen. Some of it's mandated by state law, and some of it is because we know that they need the training to be able to be successful in school. So it's a pretty big bucket if you really think about professional development in general terms. Yeah.
So that includes like cultural proficiency that everyone goes through and everything?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, or it could include mandatory reporter training, right? And so that's something everybody has to go through in the school district. And so they're also part of it, which is on a cycle, but it is something that we have to make sure that every one of our employees participates in the district. Yeah.
So thank you. This was, it's helpful to see, the ask and where the money's going. But I do have a critique. And I would say this isn't unique to this presentation. I'd say it's sort of the framework of all of the presentations have very much a lens from that group or that silo. It's missing a lot of finance information, this is a finance committee. We don't have any framework of what was the comparison to last year. We don't have, A versus B. We don't have what percent increase is this? Does this even represent an increase? So I don't know who, and I've talked to the superintendent about this, and we sort of teased at this in past presentations. I think just maybe Mr. Orlando, this is something you can. I think all of our budget presentations have to have a 5-year view of what was the spend for each of these categories for the last 5 years and the percentage increase from last year to this year. I mean, that's even like the minimum ask. Without that, it's hard to even have a finance discussion. Like, this is really a curriculum presentation. It's not really a finance presentation. So if we can make that happen, I think it would be helpful for the public, but especially helpful for us. It's hard for us to contextualize this as what's the ask in terms of the macro spend without that.
And we did have a look back at, we were trying, it's not apples to apples this year for us because we're transitioning levels, and with 5th grade going into the middle school, it puts another wrinkle in the way that we budget. So we used to budget in the past as a 10 and 30, right? So we had elementary and then we had secondary. And K-5 budgeted elementary, 6 to 12 primarily was budgeted as a secondary. And so we sat down with Vic and his team and said, how are we going to make this work for us now that we have elementary, middle, and high school? And there are really 3 different buckets with 5th grade. They were always, but it really becomes something a little bit more that once 5th grade comes into that middle level. And so this year we have a 10, 20, 30 instead. We did a comparison, and our budget's not actually up because we were trying to your point, I mean, we're really thoughtful, and we try to be really thoughtful about that. That is not to say that in a year we may not go up a little bit, because in our department, textbooks are a really big driver of something that could cause a large swing in our budget. For instance, we talked about reading, right? So reading next year is something at the elementary level that is on our docket to review. That is an expensive proposition, which is why our series is from 2011, but it's time, right? And so you'll probably see a large swing in our budget next year because of those textbooks. We just don't have any really large adoptions this year that would have swung our budget in that direction. And so we did start to try to really look back. It just became harder because we shifted the way that we budgeted everything. But overall, we believe that we're right pretty much on target from where we were last year. I appreciate that question, and it's something that Jen and I definitely grapple with because we want to make sure that we're being responsible and not asking too much, but asking for what we need as we move along. So next year is where I think you'll see a swing in our budget, and it's because of elementary reading. That's usually what's going to drive us to have any kind of swing from a curricular standpoint.
I guess Peter is also asking, like, in terms of the curriculum adoption cycle, you can give a 5-year projection of, you know, these textbooks are in the cycle to be replaced this year, you know, elementary reading.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
We can, and we try to level it out. So the way that you do the textbook adoption is you try to make sure that you don't have any, it's impossible when it comes to like elementary reading because it's just so costly, but you really try to level out so that you don't have the whole entire district for ELA at the same time, right? Because that would be too costly. So the way that you run your cycle is you try to be as level as you can, knowing that you're going to have textbooks every single year, but you don't want to have an inordinate purchase one year and then it goes like this, right? You want to try to be as level as possible. Some of them are just a really big driver and you can't help it, but that cycle does help us know and predict what we have coming up. Yeah.
Okay, I'll see, and I completely agree. I almost like want the math version of this. So we got all the reasons why, which is extremely important in a budget conversations, not to forget the eyes on the prize and like what the kids are, but like a math version of it with trajectory of the past 5 years, being able to see where we're going and whys. And then to echo Kimberly, because I feel like I said this multiple times, I need to see the part of the whole a lot as well. So I know that you're looking at professional curriculum and instruction and how it affects your budget, but as a reflecting of the district budget, then we can say that is 20% of all the professional development we do for the entire organization. So it's just really helpful to look at it and wrap our heads around it, really. But I think you all did a wonderful job explaining where the money goes in these big buckets. One of my first questions, and I'm trying to make sure, it's a little bit of trouble with making sure that the slide is the right slide I'm asking about, so bear with me. I think it's around slide 16. Let me see if that's about right. Okay, 2 questions. One, it's a little bit before it can actually go with a larger slide, but you can just answer this overall. You explained really well over the course, like, okay, here's elementary, here's middle, here's high school. But just tell me what you're buying, because you kind of alluded, it's not staff costs, but sometimes it is staff cost, sometimes it's textbooks, and sometimes it's digital. But what are like the 3 to 4 big buckets that you purchase? Is it professional development supports? Like, what are those big areas of purchase that your price tags? Like, I always think of the GL code. What's your GL codes on these?
So that's why we focused on the 3 areas we focused on, which were textbooks, digital resources, and professional development. There are buckets. I mean, there's nothing that stands out like this costs $100,000 for us, per se. Maybe it might be a textbook, right, that could cost that much money. But really, our buckets are those 3 areas. They're textbooks, they're digital resources, and professional learning. They're the 3 biggest drivers for our budget when we think of elementary, middle, and high, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, remember, we have other budgets, right? So we have an achievement imperative budget, right? Which is not significant, but it's significant, right? Because it's $200,000 or $300,000. So, but our big buckets from elementary, middle, and high are what we focus on, which are textbooks, which are digital resources, and they are professional learning. And our digital resources are expensive, right? I mean, they just are. And they're kind of overtaking textbooks in some regards when you think about where our spend is. as a group.
Well, that's almost like part of my brain was thinking textbooks are digital resources. And so like there's an overlap there, but also things like Schoology, I think was a really great example. So just having those three big brackets is actually really helpful. When I get to slide 16, let me make sure I'm on the right one. There's an asterisk at the bottom that I wanted to unpack a little, because I was like, what does that mean? Includes new data warehousing tools, which that makes sense, but the data practices that support student learning. What's that?
So when we think about MTSS as one of our major areas of professional learning, it's all that is encompassed there. It also includes learning how to use our new data warehousing tool that is intended to support that. So that professional learning tied to a digital tool might not be an assumption that you make when you think about MTSS, but that's a critical focus area for this upcoming year.
So would that cost, so going back to what's the math question, that cost be in the hours that you're paying teachers outside of the classroom to do that training, or bringing in an outside person to training, or both?
It can depend. It really can depend. We have some training that is built into our contract, and it's a 3-year plan. So we have our year 1, but we had to go a little beyond that in year 1. So year 2, we have set hours that are part of our contract, and if that suffices, and we've done a train the trainer model with our own staff, it may just be like you said, if we need to pull a team after school for a training. But we're really trying to be strategic with using people when they're available during the school day or on in-service days. But some of that training would come there. We have a consultant we work with from MCIU who comes in for the MTSS work and supports us there. She's going to do some upcoming training. So those types of partnerships would be embedded in that bucket.
Got it. And you said this earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So basically daytime professional development is always weaved in, and that doesn't fall in your budget lines. The extra outsiders and the extra time, that's what does fall in your budget lines.
Right. If we're hiring a consultant, if we're paying teachers to attend a workshop outside of work hours, if we're paying them to go to a conference or paying for a conference, and curriculum development work, one of the misleading things about the way we think about budgeting, 2270 is like our PD, but we do a lot of learning through curriculum development. As you know, when you're developing, you're building capacity of groups sometimes, and that work can be really, there can be great intersections there, but we don't always think of that as PD, and it's not coded as PD, but that may be time that we're paying people after school, and that makes up part of the pie, where I'm bringing a team together to do curriculum development work.
Got it. Okay, that makes total sense. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was really clear and transparent.
Yep.
Not just the overlap, but where the budget is falling in these areas. And that was my next question, which is like, wait, I have to wrap my head around these PD costs, and that is Kimberly, I think what you asked for will help me as well. Oh, I guess going back to Peter's question, it would also be nice to understand where ESSER in the past has paid for things, where it's paying for things this year, and how it'll affect future budgets when we don't have that funds. And will those costs be, we're putting it in now, we have the money, so we're buying this now, and we won't have to pay for it again. This might be something you can't answer now, but would be helpful in a viewpoint, like understanding the budget and saying this is the percentage that's covered by ESSER. We won't have these costs again, or we will, and we'll have to pay for them in our own budget.
So, I probably can speak to that. ESSER should go away, honestly. I don't see that as an ongoing fund that's going to be like a forever fund. And in fact, we had like an ESSER 1, and then we've had an ESSER 2, and now we're on the APR ESSER, which is kind of ESSER 3, and we had a 7% set aside. So there's different funds that have come, and they all have different amounts with them. I'm not thinking that that's going to continue after ESSER 3. ESSER 3 actually is, we could use it the next 3 years, right? So it's not a one-year fund, but what we've attempted to do with anything that we're spending on ESSER is have it be something that we don't have to continue. So we're paying for the buckets. You saw summer. We paid for summer last year out of ESSER. And then this year we're also paying for summer, and next year we're paying for summer as well. So we've decided to focus on that area in particular. We've paid for some of, we paid for some filters, like from a health and safety perspective, and we paid for people to help clean as a health and safety perspective as well. That's going to go away, right? So that we don't anticipate, cross our fingers, that we have to do that forever. You heard Dr. Patone talk to you about the program that we're looking at. That whole entire fund, that whole entire budget is coming from ESSER. So that is a one-time expense the district would have had to pick up, but now instead we're using ESSER to pay for it. So we didn't ask you to budget for it. We took ESSER money for it instead. We're doing the same thing in the mathematics area and looking at interventions in math. We just aren't as far along with that area, but we have money set aside to pay for that. And then in addition to that, this current school year, we have 2 guidance counselors budgeted that will only be for this year from a transitional standpoint at the elementary level. And then the next 2 years, we have 3 middle school intervention teachers to help with any kind of learning loss or gaps budgeted. All of those positions are posted as LTSs so that when the life of the grant is over, they go away. But the intention is to help us just get through the COVID time and that, you know, anything that we might be seeing associated with COVID. So that's what we have money budgeted for ESSER. In our budget, it's just offset some of our intervention costs that we would have normally picked up. We took the money and used it for that, and then we also offset summer school. So next year, summer school will not be in there, but the following year, you'll see that budgetary expense come in. We've always use our own budget for a lot of summer school. Sometimes families pay, but a lot of it is funded through the school district and my budget in particular. But we decided to use ESSER for it for the next couple of years. So that expense will come back in because it's something that the district really does value. We just decided to offset some of our costs with that. Is that a good answer?
Yeah, it was great, and
Okay.
just seeing that in the big picture
Yeah.
is really helpful
Okay.
too, because that was the only piece that was, and you mentioned it, and we've talked about it before, but just the scope would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
And just my comment, some of the ESSER, I'll call ESSER 1 and 2 monies, that was spent in last school year in the 2021. So everything from health and safety, helped out with the virtual programs, some of the summer schools. So that's kind of, we used that, some of the technology, some of the ventilation, that was what was used in those funds. That was already spent last school year.
Okay, I have a question, or a couple of questions. On slide, let's see, slide 19, you go through the residencies. There isn't anything for 6th grade. Is there something in the works, or Penn Museum, I guess, ancient cultures?
Yeah, at the time that residencies, 2019 was the first year of them, the idea was to keep growing them, and we had to put it on hold. So we're trying to sort of get back to where we were and then keep building. So at this time, the blooming one is Penn Museum, and whether that grows into a full residency, I think that's something that's on deck for conversation and consideration. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, is the Holocaust Museum anything that we usually send students to at any time?
That's a good question. I'm not.
In DC? No, Philadelphia.
I don't think so.
It's at 5th and Market Streets.
Right, I don't think we've sent anyone though.
No, I guess.
You mean the one in?
There's one in
In
DC.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. The idea of the field trip, is one piece of the curricular experience. The residency, the vision was that this fit spirited community under the strategic plan, so they were more local and we could develop an ongoing partnership. So, I don't know that we've explored that museum per se for either right now, but that's something that we could follow up and explore, because I'm not sure the answer to that. The other thing I would say is related to your question about grade 6 being sort of new. Grade 2, that's a proposal, but not yet. That's another one I would say is in bloom.
Okay.
So,
I have a
Hasn't
question,
happened yet.
though, in reference to the residencies, because I would like to know, what is the experience like? Like, for example, what is the 2nd grader going to do at the Franklin Institute?
right. So the vision for the residency, and keep in mind, the vision was started, they started the build, and they're really, really young, if you want to think of them that way. The idea was that this was to be something that was beyond a field trip. It wasn't a one and done. It was something where our teachers were able to partner with and build a relationship with the organization, and take back some learning and even make some curricular revisions so that there was some embedded learning leading up to either a visit to or a visit from, and it could be something that was lasting and not just a one-day experience. So that was the vision for the residency. If you think of like an artist in residence, they come in and they may do a project for a year with students. So it was supposed to be more expansive, and we're just at the gate. So just for context there. But the vision is that it would be broadening, and when we look at field trips in the past, we had 600, 700. When I came in, the priority was on trying to make space for the residencies, and they would take priority and perhaps be the core anchor experience, and maybe we wouldn't have these 700 trips needed to be expansive. We would just have this enriched partnership. Not to say that we'd be doing away with field trips, but probably prioritizing and narrowing to some degree.
I'm going to just focus on fourth grade because Nancy Concha-Mesa did the work on this with a team, but they were talking about the project-based learning experience that they're creating for next year, and part of it is in conjunction with the residency for the conservatory. So it's really integrating that into that project-based learning experience. It was really well done, and I told her we needed to steal it for other levels, but it really took into account that specific residency and grew it as part of that project-based learning experience. So that's a good example of how it will function really well, hopefully, for us moving forward.
That was an example of the PD that wouldn't be budgeted as PD. It's curriculum development, but we're paying folks to take the learning they had under a different budget code and apply it in a PLC and a curriculum writing team, and they just did a remarkable job on it. But it really was this long through line there from the PBLs, the reimagination, residency idea through to the PD and then curriculum development.
It would be great, though, if we could have the students have, I mean, I'm for more field trips, actually, more hands-on experiences, because we have so many wonderful museums and arboretums and, et cetera, for them to really experience that a lot of the children would never know. I mean, all of our children should have an experience with the great Derek Pitts at the Franklin Institute, and they do have, make arrangements for students to go there. So I think, and they're not always during the day, because the night skies events is fabulous, so that's a big wish.
Vic, I have a request for you. Would you just go through kind of an overview of who has budgets, what, so that we can understand, like, there's this transportation and facilities, there's, do you know what I mean? The different buckets, the school principals have a budget.
Okay. So I guess we've gone through these presentations and we've seen so far, we've had our operation or transportation, and they went through that, and those administrators are responsible for that. And then we had student services. So you had, Ms. Frazier went through everything from nursing to special education, guidance, and et cetera, and her and her team is responsible for that budget. And then Mr. Frazier went over the IT budget. His department, him and his staff is responsible for that. We went through all that. Mrs. Schaefer went over the staffing. So we went through the staffing, which we coordinate with the HR department, Human Resource Department, and who are the staff that are in the various positions. We looked at the collective bargaining agreements to come up with the wages. And then in addition to that, PSERS comes out with the contribution rate for employers. They certify it, and this upcoming year it's 35.26%. For every dollar that employee makes that we have to budget for. In addition to that, then we have our benefits. So we're in a consortium for our healthcare and our RX. We're self-insured for our dental. We also have other things like life insurance and disability and workers' comp that we also get from our HR department and our vendors that we deal with. Then in addition to that, there's others, I call it smaller departments, superintendent's office, the school board, the tax collector, legal that are budgeted. Also that I work with those administrators and come up with those budgets. We have a debt service budget, obviously, for the way we work with PFM on. And they're kind of the main buckets. And I think we talked before, the big part of the budget is, we're a labor-oriented industry, it's staff. It's basically the staff, which is like 77% of the budget. So it's kind of like the main buckets that come into play.
So 77% of the budget is benefits and pay for
And
our staff.
salaries and benefits.
Salaries and benefits, and the remaining, like 20%, 23%.
Right, that's.
Is I guess, what we have flexibility on. Some flexibility.
Some flexibility on it. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
all flexibility, because
No,
obviously.
because we have debt service.
You have debt service in there, you have mandated costs, for special ed with tuition and IU services and things of that nature. Also, you have contracts in there for a lot of the software, copiers, leases that, we have, you're committed to. And then you have, maybe some flexibility in supplies, not a lot. You need it for instructional purposes, we need it for, custodial supplies, so, there's not a lot in there.
Right, so there's not much flexibility in the budget. I guess I used the wrong word. I should have said some of it is fixed and some of it is not
Very
fixed.
Correct.
Do we have one big pie chart with everything that you talked about?
You have one,
Big pie chart, that, everything that you just stated.
I'm sorry? We have the one pie chart we put together with the things put together, and then we can break out, if you want, to the different sections of it.
I mean, I think the big buckets, that's what we need to see, a big picture. And then of course, we can make, smaller pie charts for each individual thing. But I think having one gigantic pie chart, because when you said 77%, I was like, oh, well, that definitely puts
Well, we
things in
do, so
perspective.
in the budget presentation, we had that in there. We didn't have it in a pie chart form, but all the numbers were there.
Right.
That you saw, then we can put them in a pie chart if you want those objects.
Right,
We can
I'm
do
sort of
that.
like Curry in that regard. I love to see a picture. I think a picture
Sure,
is worth 1,000 words.
We could take the numbers from the presentation, we can put them in a pie chart for you.
Great.
And
thank
I'm
you.
going to go further. Sorry, do you mind if I just add on to that? It would be amazing if on our website, and whoever does that part, I'm not sure, that we could start with that big pie chart and then you're able to click and bounce to your presentation or bounce to your presentation, because understanding, as educators, we all know, start with the big picture and then give us the layering and the breakdown. So if that's a way, that's what we've been asking for the last 4 budget meetings, is for us to understand the forest for the trees and then drill down when we can. So if we could help the community see that too, that I know, I don't think that's a big ask, but I think it would be a really great way to help people understand how these pieces all fit together and what's the big picture. And then when they want to drill down and understand what's curriculum doing and what are they doing with that money, oh, this is really impressive, they can do that too. So, sorry, I keep pushing the...
So that would be helpful. I guess in the budget book, once a year we put out a budget book, or have put out a budget book, and it has that pie chart that describes 77% is salaries and benefits, 10% approximately, maybe 12 this year, is debt service, and that kind of thing. It's in the budget book, which we have access to on the website or through the portal, right?
On the website. Well, yeah, it's completed.
It may be in some places, but I think for all of these things, it's hard to contextualize without the reference right there. So, my suggestion would be, Carrie has asked for more numbers, Kimberly has asked for more macro picture, is to have a standard format for this stuff and a lot of repeating information, especially that macro information, right? That big picture pie chart, we should start every presentation with that. As a reminder, here's the big number, here's what we're talking about. This is the slice that we're talking about today. And then for any single presentation, you should always have at least a 1-year look back. And, you know, I know the capital projects always has a 5-year look forward. I would say we always have to have a 5-year look back, and whatever projection we can provide looking out into the future, we should always embed that into every line. That's the important number for this meeting. The context is important about why the ask is being made and where the money is going. But from a finance perspective, we really need to know what percent of the budget is this, and how much of an increase, if any, is there?
That's a great suggestion. And we'll incorporate that, I think, into the future presentations. But I hope this presentation was helpful, and I hope what Vic provided in terms of the different buckets is helpful. And figuring out where each of the 4 meetings fits in was helpful. Do we have any other questions about the budget at the moment, or can we go on to the fund balance?
Do you have?
Just so everyone knows, we don't have any members of the public in the audience. Otherwise, I would have asked if they had questions as well.
Okay, the next presentation, part of our annual budget process, is to talk about 2 things. One is our reserve fund and also our fund balance commitments. So the first slide here is part of our capital improvement plan. These 5 projects here are what the board has approved for the upcoming school year. And you can see it's the roof, the building automation system, the tennis courts, and the asphalt service were approved last month. So that totals $4.6 million that the board has approved and committed for the upcoming year. I believe those are scheduled for this summer. This slide here, also part of the capital reserve. We also got our bus replacement plan. That was from in the March presentation. There was 20 buses planned for next school year at $3.7 million. And then the information technology plan, that was in the IT presentation last month with the 4 items that are looking to get approval on. I believe a couple of these items already have been approved. That's $325,000. So that's a total of $8.6 million for our capital reserve fund for 22-23. And then just kind of give you an overview, what does the fund look like right now? You can see our current balance is $7.2 million. The board did approve this year 8 bus replacements at $1.2 million. Those are on order. We're still waiting for a delivery date on those buses. The 22-23 capital reserve items, the $8.6 million was from the prior 2 slides. It's a total. And then we have about $800,000 projects currently for this year that we're finishing up. So that comes out to a total estimated uses of our capital reserve at $10.6 million. And you can see our estimated remaining balance is a negative $3.4 million. Now what we would do is, before we get to that, that's okay. So here we have a $3.4 million deficit right now. As in the past, when we have a final accounting and our audit is completed, we will see what potential general fund surplus is available, and the board at that point in time can make a approval to transfer funds to the capital reserve to fund additional programs or items as needed for the upcoming year and for the future. And then the last slide is our committed fund balance. As for this school year, we have 2 items: future PSERS obligation, that's the pension obligations at $10.3 million, and then we have future post-employee benefits, that's under General Accounting Standard Board, I believe it's 75, there's $5 million. So our total committed fund balance is $15 $12,300,000.
Can you just give us an understanding of how the future PSERS obligations fund is going to be used, or what we've had talked about?
Well, we have, so the PSERS rate right now is, well, for next year is 35.26%. The projection by 2030 would be 37.3%, is what the contribution rate is. Under the GASB 68 rules, our future net pension obligation is over $400 million on our balance sheet for the unfunded liability that the pension plan has. So we'll have to see how, the future holds out with the rates and our budget situation and those funds.
Are there questions about the fund balances?
So, similar feedback on the first slide. I know we showed it in the operations budget discussion, but the 5-year chart would be great here.
Okay.
It's because, we've already shown it. We should always
Yeah, we
just
do.
provide context.
Okay, we can add that for the future.
I know there's been some confusion about this. This, using the end-of-year surplus and then moving it into the capital reserve fund, that's standard practice for schools because we're using the rules for municipalities around the
municipal code, correct.
Yeah. Versus the school code. And that's, to our knowledge, that's every school district in Pennsylvania.
That's my understanding, yes.
And then there was the post-employment benefits. Some of that money, the amount of money we have in post-employment benefits doesn't fully cover what we think the liabilities might be, because some of that money we segregated into the segregated fund for the lawsuit, right?
That's correct. So our future pension obligation, last actuary report was over $11 million. Okay. One thing's we'll have, with our pending litigation matter, we may have to adjust some of these commitments to assign more towards the litigation. So this number may change.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the capital reserve fund, we have we have 8.6 million that we budgeted for this coming summer. Some of it is in 2021 and some of it is in.
No, so the 8.6 million are items we're hoping to purchase this year. The 4.6 million of the capital improvements are slated to be completed this summer, and I believe some of the IT items will be slated to be completed over the summer into the year. The 3.6 million in the bus replacements, we have not made any commitment to that. We would have to go out for bid, which typically we do like in the fall. And depending upon the final counting, then we would come back to you as to, what we would fund or what we would, propose for the board to approve for us to fund. So there's no commitment on the buses, the 3.6, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Unless there are any other questions, we're adjourned for today.